Hello and welcome to this video lecture presentation on graphing a quadratic function. So here's what we want to do. We want to graph a function f of x that's in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, where a, b, and c are some sort of number. If our a term, the number in front of the x squared, is less than 0, we will have an x max, and it will open downward. If a is greater than 0, there will be an x min, and our graph will open upwards. And then we'd end up having an x min down here, and then up here we would have an x max. When our a term is less than 0, we'll have an x max. It'll be up here, it opens downward. If a is greater than 0, it'll be an x min, and it'll open upwards. So this isn't a linear line, so you need more than 2 points in order to be able to accurately draw this graph. So the more points that we have to graph, especially when you have a function that has an exponent on your variable of greater than 1, you want to plot multiple points. So what we're going to be looking for is we're going to calculate the x-intercept. Remember, for an x-intercept, if this is a sample function, the graph of a sample function right here, x-intercepts are the point of the line that crosses the x-axis. So if you're right on a point on the x-axis, there is no y component. So the y-coordinate for each of these points is 0. And then you'd have some sort of x value if you're right on the y-axis. So that'll help us. Then we could calculate the y-intercept. The y-intercept is, here's our sample function here, a graph of a sample function, and then say it crosses, this line crosses the y-axis at this point. So it's the point of the line that intercepts or crosses the y-axis here. And notice that if you're right on the y-axis, you have no x-coordinate. X is 0. So to find the y-intercept, we're just going to plug in 0 in for x, and then we'll find the corresponding y value. Then we're going to look at taking the x min or max. We already established by looking at the number on the leading variable, the x squared term, if it's positive or negative, if we're going to have an x min or an x max. We're going to basically, in order to find this x coordinate, we're going to take the average of our x-intercepts. And once we take the average, then we're going to plug it into the equation to find y. So let's look at our first example here. So why don't we look into finding the x-intercept? The x-intercept is when the point of the line that crosses or intercepts the x-axis. So therefore, there's no y-coordinate. So f of x, which is equal to y, is 0. And that's equal to x squared plus 2x minus 3. So 0 is equal to, now we're going to factor out our trinomial here. We have to do it as minus and plus. Our x squared divvies up as x and x. So we have, you ask the riddle, what two numbers are multiplied together will give me 3. When added or subtracted will give me 2, and the answer is 3 and 1. That's the only way to break up 3. Now the question is, where does the 3 go? Where does the 1 go? And you have to look at the sign of the middle term. Since the sign of the middle term is plus, the larger of these two factors here have to match the sign of the middle term. So it's 3 plus 3 and minus 1. Now I have this and this. You set them individually equal to 0. So you have x minus 1 is equal to 0. X plus 3 is equal to 0. We're going to add 1 on the left and right. So x is equal to 1. We'll subtract by 3 on the left and right side of the equal sign. So x is equal to minus 3. So now we'll put this in our table. These are x-intercept values. So when x is 1, when x is minus 3, y is 0. When x is 1, our y is 0. That's what we just solved for. Now let's look at calculating our x min or max. Well, let's determine what we have here. We could assume that there's a 1 on our x squared. Since 1 is greater than 0, we are going to have, since 1 is greater than 0, we're going to have an x min, and this will open upwards. So we will have an x min. So all we have to do is just add the 2 and divide by the number of points we're looking at, which is 2. So it'll be 1 plus a minus 3 over 2. Plus times a minus will give me a minus. So you have 1 minus 3 over 2. Minus 2 over 2 equals minus 1. So there's our x min right there. Minus 2 minus 1. So here's our x-intercept. X-intercept. Here's my x min. Now what we want to do is we want to plug in minus 1 into our function here in order to find the corresponding y value. So we have minus 1 squared plus 2 times minus 1 minus 3. So that's going to be minus 1 squared is a positive 1. 2 times minus 1 is minus 2. Minus 3. So you end up getting 1 minus 2 minus 3 is minus 4. And then the last thing that we could solve if we want is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the point of the line that crosses the y-axis, so your x-coordinate is 0. So if I plug in 0 into my f of x function, my f of x, or y, is equal to minus 3. So that's how we get our y-intercept. You just plug in 0 in for x. 0 squared is 0. 2 times 0 is 0. That goes away. And you're left with f of x, or y, is equal to minus 3. And that's what we have. Now we have enough points where we could graph this. So I'll go over to the left 3 up 0. I'll go over 0 down 3. I'll go to the left 1. And actually I reversed these here. I'll go to the left 1 down 4. And then I'll go over 1 up 0. Now I just connect the dots. Make sure you hit each point. Don't miss it like I did. And then here's our graph. And that's how we do it. That's pretty much all there is to this. So why don't you take a look and try this out to see if you understand it. So y is equal to minus 2x squared plus 8x minus 6. Right, so let's examine this. Notice that our leading term is minus 2. Since minus 2 is less than 0, this is going to be an x max, and then it's going to open downward. So I'll open like this. All right, I always recommend when you're factoring a trinomial to, if you can, get rid of the leading term by factoring it out if it's common between all three, and also get rid of the minus sign off of the leading term. So I'll factor out a minus 2, I get x squared minus 8x plus 6. Oops. x squared minus 4x plus 3. That's when you factor out a 2. Now what we could do is we could calculate our x-intercepts. That's when y is equal to 0. So I have 0 is equal to minus 2 times x squared minus 4x plus 3. We divide by minus 2 on each side. So 0 over minus 2 becomes 0 after we divide off the minus 2. So you get x squared minus 4x plus 3. Now what we could do is we could factor this into x and x, minus and minus, since your third term is a positive. Minus times a minus is a positive. And then when we add and subtract our last terms here, then we end up getting a minus middle term. So now you ask the riddle what two numbers are multiplied together will give me 3, but when added it'll give me 4. That's 3 times 1, because 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4, so we'll put 3 in and 1 in. Now we set each of these equal to 0. So if 0 is equal to x minus 3, and 0 is equal to x minus 1, we'll add 3 on each side. So 3 is equal to x, and we'll add 1 on each side. X is equal to 1. So our x-intercepts here, our first x-intercept is 1. Notice we plug in 0 in for y to find that. And then our other one is 3. This is our second x-intercept, and that's when y is 0. Now what we could do is we could go back to our original problem here and find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is when x is equal to 0, so I plug in 0 in for that. So when x is 0, y is minus 6, because minus 2 times 0 squared is 0. 8 times 0 is 0, so all this goes away. So y is equal to minus 6. So you have 0, minus 6, and here's your y-intercept. Now the last part we need is our x max. So we just need our x max to find that. All we have to do is just average out our two x-intercepts. So you add 1 and 3 together, divide by the number of points that we have here. So that's 2 points. So 4 over 2 is 2. So there is our x max. How do we find the y coordinate? We take 2 and plug it in for x into our function. So I'll just write it over here. Y is equal to minus 2 times 2 squared plus 8 times 2 minus 6. So y is equal to minus 2 times 4 plus 8 times 2 is 16 minus 6. Y is equal to minus 8 plus 16 minus 6. Oops, minus 6. Y is equal to minus 14 plus 16. So y is equal to 2. So that is our maximum. So now we have enough information. Now we have 4 points to use in order to plot our chart or quadratic here. We go over 0, down 6, put this right here. We go over 1, up 0. We go over 2, up 2. And we go over 3, up 0. And you can kind of see our curve here that comes from this. And that's what that looks like. And that is how you solve, or that is how you graph quadratic functions using 4 different points of interest: the y-intercept, the x-intercept, and calculating your x min or max. Thank you for listening and have a good one. Bye bye.